Thank you for showing up. I appreciate y'all for being here. My name is Cody Nagar. I do work for the City of Springfield, Department of Workforce Development. I'm the Senior Workforce Development Specialist for pretty much all of our training programs. So our WIOA Title I programs, SNAP Employment and Training, Skill Up, as we know it, our EDA Good Jobs Challenge, and our Apprenticeship Building America grants. And uh, this chart can kind of be viewed as a little bit of a preview of things I enjoy and what to expect from this presentation, obviously aside from AI. But I do have a question for you. If you're not super familiar with AI, what do you think about when you hear the words AI? Do you think of a movie from 2001 featuring a young Haley Joel Osment as he embarks on a journey of self-discovery and belonging? Or do you think of that advanced intelligence that turns against humanity to save Earth from the humans that inhabited it? Or possibly the mastermind behind a conspiracy that could put machines in charge of humanity's future? Or an intelligence that takes on the worst characteristics of human behavior that requires the intervention from Earth's mightiest superheroes? Well, I have some good news. This form of AI is 100% purely science fiction and is many, many years away from becoming a reality. That artificial superintelligence, it's more of that speculative concept, and that kind of is referring to the thought that an AI surpasses human. We're still in the neighborhood of shooting for regular old human intelligence. And in fact, the more concerning part about AI right now is focused on copyright infringement rather than human extinction. So, that being said, what AI actually looks like is considerably more tame. And this looks at things like, how you get those recommendations for a playlist on Spotify. How about trying to finish that sentence when you're typing in Outlook? Doing a little bit of translation on Google, and that tried and true spell check functionality. And of course, figuring out how do I get there on Google Maps, and pretty much anything that involves searching on Google these days. Uh, Another great example of this is if you ever notice Netflix when you're scrolling, you watch a movie, you come back, you're trying to find something else, and then magically the thumbnail's changed. Well, that's a form of AI trying to figure out what's the best thing to show you to get you to click on it and watch. These are all forms of what we're kind of considering AI. So, if this is what AI is, why are we talking about it? And more importantly, why should we care? And first, to understand why we should care, we need to talk about the past and how people tend to respond to technological innovations. And we're going to jump back to the early 1800s and we're going to talk about a group of people known as the Luddites. Now, in today's society, we kind of view the Luddites as technophobes. These people were gifted artisans that worked in the textile industries in Great Britain prior to the Industrial Revolution. And when the Industrial Revolution happened, they tended to rebel against the factory system and these kind of sophisticated machines. But they didn't hate the machines so much as they were resisting that weakening of their collective bargaining and the reduction of the skills needed to make a living in the industry, which then started to disrupt their livelihoods and lowering their wages. So the Luddite movement in modern times, like I said, has kind of become like that symbol of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that kind of comes from the workforce when we're faced with this technological disruption. And what we've noticed that Over the past 100 years or so, a pretty distinct 30-year cycle has emerged in relation to this technological advancement and disruption that happens within the workforce. So we're going to jump forward to the 1940s and take a look at the modernization of the assembly lines. Now, 1940s roughly marks the end of that second industrial revolution. We had two significant world wars, and what we find is that there was a lot of innovation that happened throughout that second industrial revolution. But what really happened on the lead up to World War II is we saw what we call the War Production Board. And this was a government agency that was responsible for overseeing the conversion of factories to meet wartime production standards. So we see a lot of those innovations get pushed onto pretty much all manufacturing within the United States. And these things include like electrical mechanized tools and assembly lines. We see mass production principles, interchangeable parts, and advanced communication through the telephone, which was a pretty new invention. That really allows for this cross-country coordination. On top of this, we see the development of what we call the War Manpower Commission. And the War Manpower Commission was the government agency responsible for managing the labor force to ensure that the factories had the skilled workers they needed to meet production goals. This included short, intensive training models that focused on applied occupational specific skills. So, if we really want to look at what the War Manpower Commission was, it is 100% the grandpa of what we know as WIOA and most workforce development programs today. But what this kind of combination and pushing of technology out and the skilling of the workforce did is it increased the productivity and output without the need of massive workforces of the 1800s. And then we also pushed large scale integration of women and minorities into the workforce. So now we have not just the men or the white men working in the factories, we now have a huge collection of people working within the production industry. Now, when this happens, there's a lot of feedback from the general populace about whether this increased mechanization in the production facilities is a good thing. And we actually see here that very similar to the arguments made 100 years before this, there was this question of do machines replace people and this concept of technological unemployment. And some of these might sound pretty familiar to what we see in the news today. But this article right here was produced in 1940 in the New York Times, and it discusses a disagreement between the MIT, president of MIT and President Roosevelt over a reduction in the workforce in the cigar making industry. Turns out they had a reduction of about 44,000 people. And the argument was going on is where will these people go to work? Like I said, this is 100 years after that initial Luddite movement happened. So let's take a look and jump forward to the future in the 1970s, where we see computers being introduced in mass. And what computers did to the workforce is they raised the demand for skilled workers, and specifically skilled workers with college degrees. And what this did is it changed the supply-demand relationship, which led to a very distinct wage gap start to form between those with a high school diploma and those with college degrees. And then we see a very broad expansion of what we call white collar jobs. Now, with the introduction of computers into the workforce, what did this do? It enabled more women into the workforce. It increased the need for pay and pace of skill upgrading. We also see a greater capital investment on a per worker basis. And we also have increased access to knowledge and information. And what was the reception at the time? Well, Let's take a look. We can see that Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, he's largely considered to be the brain of Apple, where Steve Jobs was thought to be the mouth. And Steve Wozniak at the time said, the home computer may be going the way of video games, which are a dying fad. For most personal tasks such as balancing a checkbook, consulting airlines, writing letters, paperwork, computers work just as well as paper does and cost a little less. So that being said, this represents what we see from even the experts in the field at the time of the limit of prediction. So even though the people who are considered the experts can sometimes be a little limited by the scope of what the technology can actually do. In fact, there's a pretty distinct adoption lag that sometimes happens between the invention of a technology and what we call social utility of the technology. And this proliferates through a cycle of skepticism. So once again, we see that same kind of fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the time that we see these major technologies taking hold in the workforce. And we're going to jump forward now to the 2000s, where we talk about not just the internet, but it's more about the internet combined with the widespread access to broadband, so that high speed access to the internet. So what this does is increase communication and organization channels, increased access to opportunities, the increased focus on educational attainment, and we start to shift employment primarily from those production sectors to service sectors, which increases the amount of employment available to both women and minorities. And we see that it does something else. It actually causes workers to work a little bit more by about 5 to 6%, which is equivalent to about 124 hours a year. DOL did a pretty extensive study to see that when workers can access work from home, they tend to do a little extra on the weekends, work a little bit later. Let me stay half an hour more to send through some of those emails. So that was a pretty interesting look that technology actually increased the amount of work people were doing. And what we ultimately see with the wide-scale proliferation of the internet is the death of distance. That distance is no longer a factor in coordinating business operations. So now we go from an interconnected country to an interconnected globe. So now companies are able to do business in real time all over the world with relative ease. And what do we see? People saying about the internet, people are giving up on it and it's just a fad. Well, I can't imagine living in a world without the internet. In fact, sometimes what's posted in the media doesn't represent the truth of what's going to happen. And that's because some technology is such a disruptive force on the general workforce, the nature of work in general, that the impact cannot be denied. And this is kind of where we're at. So if we've noticed, I said there was a 30-year pattern. The last internet we're talking about was 2000. What's on the horizon? And that's 2030. And we are slowly marching towards that time. And we can already see the writing on the wall. AI and machine learning powered automation is on the forefront to cause that disruption. And in fact, it's already starting to cause disruption as is. The real question is, what form of AI or this machine learning is going to be the true disruptive force? We see things like ChatGPT right now and other technologies. Employers are making some pretty big plays and investments in the technology, but there's no guarantee because, as we can see here, there's a lot of factors that go into what we call AI and what AI can be. Because in reality, AI can be a lot of things. And this is a chart that is shows the tracking of different AI technologies. This is called the Gartner Hype Cycle. It's put out by a company called Gartner that tracks technological introduction to not only just the workforce, but to the general population. So we can see that there are numerous amounts of AI technologies that are in this first stage. And what these stages are is this first stage is the innovation trigger. And what we see is something gets introduced that generates a lot of initial buzz. And as the expectations of what this technology could possibly do rises, it rises into this peak of inflated expectations to where there's an overenthusiastic and unrealistic amount of promises and hype surrounding these different technologies. And I think over the last few years, we can see that AI has largely dominated many of the headlines, most of them making pretty large and pretty wild claims. But as the technology tends to hit its limits, we move into this what we call trough of disillusionment, to where the interest and some of the hype starts to die off because when you don't keep promises, people tend to disengage. But this is really the crucible that most technologies fall through. And what'll happen is eventually they'll hit a point to where the companies who were overhyped will fall off, and the technologies that are truly impactful, the models, the different pieces of software will move into what we call the slope of enlightenment, to where they start seeing that widespread mass appeal for true, meaningful, impactful integration into what in our case the world of work and into the plateau of productivity, to where they're kind of everyday use cases and part of the actual fabric of society. So another word for this model is called a bubble. This representation is what we've seen throughout the dot-com boom of the early 2000s. If you've lived through that time, you were very, very aware of what happened when that dot-com bubble burst. And a lot of the websites that were out there offering things, they no longer exist. The companies behind them no longer exist. And that's the reality of what we're looking at for a large majority of these AI companies, because at the end of the day, there is not a need for 100 different AI companies that offer the same products. Eventually, there will come a time when the majority of those companies integrate together, and what we'll be left with is the remains of something that's truly impactful. Now, this chart is missing one important line, and that is, oh, I'm sorry. And that is, nope, okay, it's not gonna let me draw. Sorry, guys. Is this line right here. There are technologies out there that receive no coverage, no hype, but their growth over time will remain steady and across the board. These are the companies that don't get the media attention, that will create change and create value over time, and not fall to this hype cycle model. And these are the ones that are highly likely to kind of come out of nowhere and offer the biggest amount of disruption. But that being said, how did we get here? to this point where so many different companies and different types of AI are in the world. And that brings us to this AI timeline. And what we see is the concept of AI actually started in the 1950s, to where Alan Turing designed a test for machine intelligence. We call it the Turing test, and it's assigned to see if technology can operate on a human level. And then in 1955, we see where the term of AI is actually born. And as we move into the 1960s, we see the first industrial robots go into the GM factories, replacing humans on the assembly line. And we see the first chatbot created at MIT in 1964 that was able to hold conversations with humans. And then we have in 1966 the first general purpose mobile robot that kind of reasoned about its own actions. But we go into an AI winter until about 1997, where not a lot happens until Deep Blue comes out of nowhere. And if you're not familiar, Deep Blue is a computer that plays chess. And the innovation was so impactful because at the time it beat the world champion, Garry Kasparov, and uh, kind of created a buzz around these technologies and what computers were able to do. And then we see Kismet. A lot of people ask, is this Furby? This is not Furby. This is a whole other thing that could detect and respond to people's feelings. So it had some level of like emotional intelligence recognition. And then in 1999, Aibo, the first robot pet dog, launched that developed skills and personality over time. And then in 2002, we get the Roomba, which is a robotic vacuum cleaner from the home, ironically enough, named iRobot, which is a movie about machines taking over the world. And then, believe it or not, in 2011, we see Siri come out with the iPhone 4S, and Watson winning Jeopardy and winning that $1 million prize. In 2014, we see the first kind of chatbot pass the Turing test. So we see these kind of chatbots that are able to trick people into thinking that they're humans. And I say trick because what this chatbot did was pretend to be a 14-year-old non-native English speaker, and was able to convince people at the AI testing championship. It's kind of a long story, sorry. That there about 33% of the people it talked to thought they were actually talking to a human. So we see that sometimes machines as early as 2014 were able to replicate kind of human-like behavior. And we also see Alexa get introduced by Amazon. And in 2016, we see Tay. And Microsoft released this chatbot called Tay on Twitter. And they let people interact with Tay, and Tay was allowed to respond. And what Microsoft learns that is when you let these chatbots learn from Twitter, it tends to learn racism. And Tay went on some pretty serious racist tirades, which resulted in Microsoft having to take it offline, and they suffered those consequences for several years, which caused some impact to uh, their structure and modeling of this technology and how they get integrated into the public. But then, and finally, in 2017, we saw that Google released an AI that was able to play the ancient Asian game of Go, which then allowed, which is kind of like chess, just way more complicated than chess. So we can see that this concept of AI and the early foundations for this AI movement have been around for about 75 years now. And what we see over time is now that as costs decrease, capabilities will increase. And this is a pretty true representation of what happens in not just the industry, the IT industry, but also technology in general. Uh, the fact that as time progresses, things will eventually get cheaper and capabilities will increase. And a great way to kind of represent this is through this picture. So, the time frame that we were just talking about, the computer at the top of this picture is a 1957 Elliott 405. The bottom picture is the 2015 Raspberry Pi in front of the same building. That Elliott 405 was introduced to Norwich City in the United Kingdom to handle payroll. At the time, it was roughly about $238,000 USD, and it was capable of putting out 25 characters a second, and it literally took up an entire room. Um, the Raspberry Pi on the bottom in 2015 cost $5 and could fit in the palm of your hand. And when we look at like capability wise, in 2015, that Raspberry Pi could do in 1 second what roughly would take that Elliott 405 2 months worth of processing time to complete. But we're in 2025. So what does the newest version of Raspberry Pi do? It's powerful enough to produce in 1 second what that 2015 model could produce in 1 minute. So we're seeing a really large, significant amount of increase in capability through just the technological aspect of the innovation. And that results in what we see of this kind of explosion around 2022, 2023 of these AI models that have new capabilities. Now, it's really hard to demonstrate how AI improves over time through the text-based models that we kind of think of. So what I'd like to do is demonstrate the difference in what the video generation models look like. So I'd like to introduce you to Will Smith eating spaghetti. As we can see here, the video on the left is something that was generated with the cutting edge technology of 2023. And this video on the right is made in 2025. So we can see in just 2 years worth of time, the significance of and pace of change, of improvement on just the video generation software as is. Now, I've heard some arguments. The one on the left may look a little bit more like Will Smith. I'm not saying this technology is perfect. I'm saying it's getting better. Rate at which it's getting better can only mean one thing. We're cooked, guys. These jobs are going away. We're done for. Actually, no. AI is not going to replace human workers, but it's going to change the workforce landscape. And we're going to see disruptions across all of the job zones. Some job zones will be severely impacted, while others will have some impact, but not significant displacement. But we will see impact. That is undeniable. The good news is In 2017, it was predicted that 80% of all jobs in 2030 haven't been invented yet. And there is an estimation that 11.8 million workers will need to find new work because of shrinking demand within their industries. The fact of the matter is, no technological innovation has ever lost or eliminated more jobs than have been created. So, that being said, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of doubt and uncertainty around the elimination of jobs 100% completely. And this, historically speaking, is very unlikely and has not happened in the past. But what we do see is that there will be jobs in new industries that are coming online or growing that we don't have the data specifically for. And what we see is that there is going to be jobs created in the semiconductor development and production industry. We are going to see jobs around data centers, specifically utilities, the networking, the server side of all of these things, the operation side, the support of these bigger, larger, more technologically advanced data centers, and the software that gets produced from all of this innovation and technology. They're going to invent new jobs. And a lot of these end user products are going to spawn AI assisted productivity jobs, and where people use AI as a multiplier for creativity, for service delivery, for analytics, and every sector across the board is going to need AI fluent workers to integrate these tools into their daily workflows. So, that being said, AI is 100% going to be a productivity tool because at the end of the day, in 2020, the labor force participation rate took a pretty significant hit and it hasn't recovered since. And it's highly unlikely to fully recover to what it was. So while the meme to the side is about doing the work of three people, AI will give us the ability to do the work of three and not feel like we're doing the work of three. There's a pretty important distinction there. So, what do we need to do? If we want to keep AI from taking our jobs, we need to use AI to do our jobs better. And we can see that employers support this thought process by planning on upskilling and redeploying over eliminating or getting rid of the older workers, because sometimes it's easier to retrain a worker than to find a new worker that might not exist. And we can see that people are already using AI in the workforce at a pretty significant rate. Oddly enough, I don't know if you might, that the computer and math trades are using AI way more. Surprising, tech people use technology. But then we also see where the arts, design, entertainment, media are using large amounts of AI in their day-to-day work life. Social sciences, education, instruction. We're seeing a pretty wide scale usage of AI in the workforce, and what people are using the AI tools are. We're doing data analysis, helping with writing, doing some scheduling, quality control, document classification. The beauty of AI is you can use it in so many ways. And what we see that one of the primary ways people are using AI right now is as a source of information. And we can see that ChatGPT now gets more visits than Wikipedia. So this is a very interesting trend of how people are accessing and finding information. So in this new world, of AI tools and capabilities. What are the skills that are going to be important? And what we see is we expect a major shift towards those cognitive, self efficacy, and technological skills by 2030. The creativity, the analytical thinking, AI literacy, adaptability are going to form the core of the next decade's core competencies. And you'll kind of see that AI, big data, technology literacy, they kind of move to the top right. They're going to be more important. They'll be those power skills. But so will those soft skills, the resilience, flexibility, empathy. They're not going to be nice to have. They're going to be absolutely critical. And they're going to be critical in all roles. Even the technical roles that might not be customer facing are going to need those human elements still integrated at their core as part of this new system, because as for right now, AI cannot fill those core human skills. So, where do we go from here? Do we need to talk about what our skills are and how we might need to increase our skill levels? Or do we go with the tried and true expressing public anger and resentment at AI? And the fact of the matter is, trying to deny AI is going to be like trying to deny the internet or deny the computer. In fact, I know for certain that we have job seekers in our system that refuse to learn computers and how to use the internet 20 to 30 years ago, and they still struggle to this day with adapting to this technology. And the technology is advancing and leaving those people behind. So not only do we need to think about these things and educate ourselves, but we also need to talk about how we educate our customers, because they are the people that we are here to serve, and they are going to be significantly impacted by these technologies. So it's time to get familiar with some of these technologies. But if you'd like to have a negative opinion of AI still, that's okay. If anything, know thy enemy. So, who are the major players in the AI space right now? We have ChatGPT, we have Claude, Copilot, Grok, Gemini. ChatGPT is ran by OpenAI. Claude is ran by a company called Anthropic. Copilot is Microsoft. Grok is XAI. Uh, Elon Musk is the owner of Grok. And we have Google with Gemini. And all of these AI models are what we call generative AI. And what that means is they generate outputs based on inputs. Uh, they're also called large language models. Now, all of these models, all of these technologies, they have benefits, they have downsides. There's no best one, there's no worst one. It's all kind of relative to what you're wanting and what features you're looking for. And yes, some models might do coding a little bit better than the other models. Uh, my coworker came back and gave a pretty good quote. So, Eric, I'm going to steal your quote. Uh, Date them all, but you don't have to marry just one. It's better to get a taste of all the different models to see kind of which one kind of you gravitate towards, but don't necessarily limit yourselves. But then the big question now is going to be, what do you mean by large language model? And what large language models are? They're AIs trained on massive amounts of text, images, um, and other content to understand, generate, and predict language. So, what they can do, they can answer questions, they can write poems, scripts, essays, they can translate, they can summarize, they can help you code, and so much more. And it's now that time in my presentation to play a game. So everyone's going to need to respond in chat. And this game show is going to be called Is It Pizza? The name of the game is very, very simple. I am going to show you a picture, and you need to tell me if you think the picture is a pizza. Very, very easy rules. All of these are pictures of real objects. I did not use AI to generate these images. That's not what I'm looking for. I just want you to look at it and tell me, is this a pizza? Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Perfect. Let's go. All right. First up, is this a pizza? It's pizza. All right. Yeah. All right. All right. Cool. All right. So what makes this a pizza? We got some crust. We got some cheese. We got a topping. I see some sauce poking out. These are all standard features of a pizza. Yes? Perfect. Next up, is this a pizza? It's pizza. Okay. 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 Great. Everyone's pretty pro pineapple on pizza. Cool. Okay, so pepperoni was a meat. This has ham. This has pineapple. We have a meat and fruit. Okay, cool. It's got the crust. It's got the sauce. It's got the cheese. This is definitely a pizza. We all agree. Cool. Next up, is this a pizza? Pizza pie, pizza, pizza. Yes, okay. Yes, yuck. Okay, we know John is from New York. Um, Not a fan of that Chicago style. All right. Anything is pizza if you're hungry enough. There is some truth to that. All right. Major features of a pizza that are present. We have crust, we have cheese, we have sauce, but this time, hey, the sauce is on top and there's no toppings. So, what we've established is pizza can be many things. Okay. Last picture. Is this pizza? No, guys. Whoa. No? No. What? What? Look, we have crust, we have cheese, the sauce, it's red, and you said fruit can be on a pizza, but this isn't pizza. What is this? What is this thing? Dessert pizza? Okay. Cheesecake. Oh, wait. So cheesecakes are kind of like pizza, but they're not pizza. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. If this isn't a pizza, it looks like the consensus is this is cheesecake. So this must be a cheesecake. All right, guys. Thank you for playing my game. And through this process, I have introduced you to one of the newest careers created by AI called data labeling. Data labeling is the process of identifying raw data like these images, like text and audio, adding labels or tags to it so these machine learning algorithms can understand and use them to make accurate predictions in the future. This is how AI is trained. We have people that are out there tagging data, tagging photos, and these algorithms are using image recognition software, natural language processing software that enable them to develop pattern recognition and predictive analysis on new unlabeled data. If you have ever participated in selecting the stop sign or the motorcycle when logging into websites, congratulations, you are helping train AI because what you are doing with those captchas are part of a process that establish human benchmarks to evaluate AI capabilities. Now, the real question is, where are these companies getting all this data for their AIs? And in fact, we can kind of see and get a breakdown of where they come from. And a lot of it's from Reddit. If you're familiar with Reddit, that may or may not be a good thing. But there is a large amount of conversational data that are held on Reddit, in the YouTube comment sections, on Wikipedia, through Yelp and Facebook, and reviews on Amazon. We get an idea of where AI is able to source their data. Yeah, yes, that would be where those hallucinations start to come from because sometimes the information that it's being trained on is not exactly correct. But as we move on in our AI skill development, we need to talk about the next important thing when it comes to not to AI is how do we use AI? And this is through a process called prompting. Now, prompting, very simple. It's how we give instructions to an AI model. The prompts are simply the outputs that you type in that give you the output. So I like to say, think of it like ordering at a restaurant. The clearer you are, the better the results. And this is now a time for a tale of two cheese pizzas. Take a look at the two pizzas. Both of these are real pizzas that I made myself. So I know that these are absolutely real pizzas. Can anyone tell me the difference between these two cheese pizzas? Go ahead and type in the chat. Let me know what you think. What's the difference? Volume on the right. Cheese bubbling. Right one has more cheese. One. Crust thickness. All right, so there's a little bit of difference. Now, let's talk about what these pizzas are. The pizza on the left is a 14-inch hand-tossed regular old mozzarella cheese pizza that's cooked well done. The pizza on the right, however, is that same large hand-tossed pizza. However, it has a sophisticated 6 cheese blend of mozzarella, provolone, feta, parmesan, Asiago, with a topping of cheddar cheese. These are both cheese pizzas. However, they are different cheese pizzas, but they look very similar. The way you order one pizza versus the other is significantly different. And that's the concept of prompting. The better or more detailed that your prompts are, it changes the results to be more usable, to be more in line with what you might be looking for. So let's talk about this pizza. Now, how would you order this pizza? The instructions are significantly more complicated. There's no red sauce. Now we want extra garlic parm sauce, more cheese, but not that many onions, green peppers, more mushrooms, and then an entire assortment of new toppings. The get this pizza, you have to give the person you're ordering it from a significantly larger amount of direction to ensure you get the quality pizza that you want. And this is exactly how prompting goes. Well crafted, clear, structured prompts can turn those AI outputs into something that are highly specific that meets your specific needs. And sometimes to get what you want and make sure you get what you want, you have to have a little conversation back and forth. But what we do know in this process of prompting and talking to AI, your communication and your skill around communication is absolutely critical. And words matter. Let's take a look at that. So, what we see is that in this situation, words definitely matter. And sometimes what you think you are asking for or saying isn't always inferred by AI. So we have to think of these AI models as someone who takes things literally. And always remember, just because something is edible doesn't mean it's not poisonous. So, that being said, we have to talk about another limitation of AI that was brought up in the chat from Steve. It's hallucinations. These generative models, these large language models, they are trying to predict your what you want based on what you give them. So there is a degree of what the output it puts forth could be completely wrong or could be completely made up. This is one of the significant limitations of AI right now is when it starts making up things and you don't check what it's giving out and just blindly copy paste, you put yourself in the situation of having some significantly hard times. And we see these things in the news where lawyers use ChatGPT to write their briefs, and now the lawyer citing court cases that didn't exist, and now they're getting disbarred. So we have to always remember we need that human knowledge base and that discernment to take a look and see what AI is producing is, in fact, a usable quality output. Now, to help you with prompting and learn a better idea of prompting, I have developed a little bit of a training manual. I call it a prompt library. And can everyone see the Google Doc that I just dragged over onto my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So, um, this Google Doc, if you didn't get to scan the QR code, no worries. I'll have an email available at the end of this to where you can get a link to this. Within this document, I've, you know, I give a definition of what AI is, how we're using it, a little more detailed guide on how to use prompting, uh, explaining what different types of AI that they talk about in the news are, different links of AI tools and things to try. I also give you a pretty broad look at different strategies of talking to AI. Um, you know, this sounds way more complicated, but at the end of the day, like you can just start talking to these different models and you'll get the feel of how to work with them. But if you're looking for like something specific or trying to get specific results from them, you can come and take a look at some of these prompting strategies. Chain of thought and iterative refinement are probably going to be two of the most powerful ones you'll use to get AI into a spot that produces something that you're looking for. That's something very useful. But there's a lot of styles and techniques out there. I've watched hundreds of hours of YouTube videos and reading different things to boil this down for you guys, so you don't have to go through that same process. But I've also given you um, kind of lists or prompt ideas with purpose. So if you're not really sure how to use AI, and that's a question I get like a lot, is like, how do I use this? Like, what can I do with it? I tried to come through and what would a workforce development professional want to use AI for? And I tried to give you some use cases, and that's the prompt purpose, what the prompt kind of is. And these things aren't amazing, 100% super technical. It's very user friendly, very beginner friendly. And I give you some ideas of what you can add to the prompt to make it a little better. So if you're really wanting to get into AI and kind of explore what it's capable of and what you might be able to use it for, come here to my library, take a look for some ideas, and you can, like I said, you can scroll through. Each heading has maybe 5 or 6 different prompts um, that you can kind of give to AI to kind of play with and see if they work for you. There's some personal growth. There's some specific things related to workforce development, career exploration, resume development, some marketing, some project management. If you have if you're an entrepreneur or if you really just want to start your own business, some prompts that'll help you do that. And then I have a section for more advanced prompts. If you're really wanting to dive deep, um, I'll more than happy talk something over with you, try to help you along the way. I'm going to demonstrate a few things that I've created using AI and tools that you can use here in a bit. But this is really just a beginner level introduction to what AI could look like or could be used for in your day-to-day operations. So, like I said, take a look. If you have any questions after this is over, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to jump on a meeting, talk things over, um, give you kind of like a little bit of one-on-one discussion on what these things can be used for. So, give you guys that. And now, I do have a question. Does this picture resonate with anyone? If you're a case manager out there, is managing that caseload and all the requirements sometimes a little crazy? Yes, all right, for sure. Right? That doing the work of three today, right? So, what I'd like to demonstrate now is out and use AI. So, what I'm pulling up right now is when you create a ChatGPT account, this is what the bare bones ChatGPT account looks like when you first create it. It's not overly technical, it's not overly complicated. You have a chat, you're uh, you can search your chats once you get a few. You can have a little library of its outputs and you can organize into projects. But right here, right in the middle, where it says ask anything, this is your prompt. And you can just go to town and just type something as simple as hello. And if you've never used AI, consider this your introduction. And it's going to respond back with something pretty simple. It's asking, let me zoom this in a bit if I can. There we go. Hey, how's it going? Great. I am, I am doing a presentation right now. Okay, it wants to know what's about. Actually, I am uh, presenting about AI and I am demonstrating you now. All right. So ChatGPT says hello, guys. So one of the things that I want kind of everyone to like get an idea on, this is not a human. It is designed to act like a human. So it does have that personal feel. And the more you use these different models, the more it will feel like you are talking to someone. But that's part of the design of these technologies. So, oh, you have to be careful, like what information you do give it. Cool. I'll answer questions at the end. I see we got some coming in. Pretty cool. All right. So, um, this is just a really quick little demonstration of what just prompting might look like. The more complicated inputs you have here, the better your responses will be. Now, I'm going to show you a few of the things that I've created in ChatGPT, some tools that you guys can are more than welcome to use. I'll give you links to all of them. So the reason why I'm demonstrating in ChatGPT is purely because of what they call custom GPTs. Now, this is my real ChatGPT account. Um, every account has access to what they call the GPT store. And in this GPT store, what what people do is create like little micro custom instructions for ChatGPT, and they are little tools that can be used over and over to get kind of similar results. So basically, it sets a very stringent or strong prompt and lets someone create a little custom tool. So I've created a few custom tools based on our work as workforce development professionals that kind of highlight what is possible through AI. Now, the first one is the case note wizard. So I have created this little tool to basically help case managers write case notes. So we can start the conversation many ways, but let's just say I want to create a funding approval case note. I can click there, and it has access to the case note policy that OWD puts out, as well as the case note manual. It searches through to look for what exactly is required to be in that case note, and it tells you right then and there. And ChatGPT has this really cool functionality called dictate, because at the end of the day, I don't want to write my case notes. I don't want to do that at all. That's the problem. That's why they're not in there in the first place. Can't I just tell someone what my case note can be and it'll do it for me? Well, let's try that out. I have a customer who is going to go to Ozark Technical Community College for CCMA training. They're going to get a CCMA certificate. They're going to start on December 1st, and that training is going to end April 30th of 2026. It's going to cost about $7,000. WIOA Adult's going to pay for it. Yeah, WIOA is going to pay for it all. And it's going to pay for that entire program. And yeah, they didn't get Pell Grants. So I tell AI what I want. Oh, it generates what I said. I hit enter. And I take a look. Yeah, that if anyone's in compliance, take a look. Does that look like a compliant case note? If it's looking good, I can simply just copy and paste directly into MoJobs. Now, should I put confidential data about the clients in the ChatGPT? Absolutely not. But some of this routine data, we sure can, especially if it needs to be put into a template. We can definitely get that information uh, automated into templates using these AI programs. And this is just a great example of how AI can be used to generate those kind of tedious case notes that we might not want to enter. Now, another great use of AI is through a tool called what I call the support service navigator. Now, sometimes when we work in an area, we're already very familiar with the resources in our area. But sometimes our clients move or get forcibly relocated through no fault of their own to a new area, and now they need resources in that new area. But I'm not familiar. I don't know where those resources are. So you can just come right here and you could spend the next couple 20 to 30 minutes Googling trying to find these things. Or we could ask the support service navigator what we're looking for. So I am in 65804, Springfield, Missouri. I am looking for housing and food support. It is an emergency. And I am 23 with one child that is 2 years old. And it's going to do all those searching for me. And it is going to start recommending the services in. And let's say we want to take a look for some more resources. Can you find 3 more resources and compile everything in a list I can print out? Alrighty. So now we have a quick and easy list that we can now email or send over to our clients with the name of the agency, the service category, some eligibility data, the phone number, the address, and some important notes. But if you are not familiar, it also sends you the sources so you can take a look at these resources for yourself. So another use case that maybe it saves you 20 minutes of searching for resources for your clients that can be now used at helping them navigate towards these resources. Great. Well, I have a question for you guys. Are there any skill up providers on the call right now? Okay, no skill up, so I'll go ahead and skip what I have for skill up because now let's go to Val. All right. So if you're familiar with WIOA adult and dislocated worker programs, you'll know that training justification is a big part of sending people to training. There is a pretty significant amount of work and assessment that goes into gathering data to make these determinations, and there's a pretty lengthy and stringent case note. What I have created here, okay, so for reference point, so you guys know, I've uploaded a resume without the client's name on it. Uh, and I picked some random like jobs and created basically a fake resume. I uploaded the ONET interest profiler results, and I've uploaded a questionnaire that we ask all clients. So I went through and just kind of created the profile of a client that we might have walking in. I've given these three PDF documents to this model, and I'm going to tell it I need a training justification statement. And now it's reviewing all of the information that has been put into into the model. It's analyzing and it's basing its responses on the requirements outlined within the OWD policy. Now, you still need a case manager to read through these things to make sure that they line up, to fact check it, to make sure it's not hallucinating. But, for some case managers, especially if you're new and not sure what to write or what this should look like, even if you don't want to use half of what it's generated, great training tool for training new staff on what should be there. But if you're wanting to save some time, here we just took 30 minutes to an hour's worth of work and did it in less than 10 minutes. And better yet, a lot of people struggle with making a good IEP. That's a big one. How do I know what their goals should be? Long-term goals, short-term goals, justification, no justification? Well, we just went ahead and created a justification statement. Let's create a goal plan. Okay. So first, we're going to identify those barriers to employment. Then we're going to identify some steps to overcome them. Okay, we're going to talk about their training and development needs, their skill gaps, and some of those milestones. Now we're going to break it down into a timeline and throw what supportive services this person might need based on uh, what they told us in their questionnaire. And now, okay, so that long-term goal should be to find a job. Cool. And we have those short-term goals. Um, so great. Now I have a little basis to start my conversation about what needs to be included in this IEP and what do I need to talk to my customer about. So then now we can take a lot of that time and that guesswork and that uncertainty that comes from talking with your clients and have a more directed conversation now that AI is able to lay out some of those frameworks. So, this is just a few use cases of how you can use some tools that I was able to create super easily just through a little bit of working with AI, understanding how it works, and understanding what's required in policy. Now, that being said, I've also started creating other kind of cool things. So let me show you the last one. Now, when I was at Mod, I demonstrated a tool that could make resumes. Uh, AI can 100% be used to make and generate and give you ideas of what you should write in your resume. Um, I've taken it a little bit of a step further now. And what I call this one is ATS Insight Pro. And what this kind of does is it simulates an applicant tracking system, and what it, there it is if you give it a job description and a resume. So I'm going to give my test client's resume and a job description to this, and I am going to ask it to score as if it was a resume. So first thing I asked it to do as part of the back end is I asked it to parse the resume as if it were an ATS system. So it's now going to go ahead and parse out all the information that's entered on the resume as if it were one of these systems. It's going to give you a little bit of information about if the text was extractable or not, uh, if certain pieces of information that were present or not. And then it's going to start scoring of whether this person or this resume is a good fit for this job to give you an idea about how it might score in an ATS. And we can see that it can simulate the weighted percentages of how an ATS might score some of the experience and education and training and skills that they have. And then it provides a little some keywords that might be missing that could have been integrated to maybe make that a little bit better, or of the resume could have been a little bit better. And we can see that, well, maybe this one would be a good fit, but we could do better. But more importantly, what if I knew what kind of ATS software was actually being used? So I can say this this ATS is a workday system. Please simulate a workday system. So if we know what specific ATS software is being used, we can use AI to go out and basically simulate as if it was that specific ATS software. Because what we're seeing with some of these ATS softwares is they're using some of these AI tools and some of these new techniques of data analysis to not just look for keywords anymore, but also to look for the context that these keywords are being used in and assess a score to how you are not just hitting the usage of the keyword, but how the keyword appears within the context of the resume. So this, as these technologies become stronger and more prolific, we're going to see that we need to maybe shift a little bit on how we help clients not just keyword stack, but use those keywords to write better descriptions, to write better resumes. So what we're able to see is a more detailed breakdown of where someone might have the experience, what those keywords are, and where that evidence of those skills appear within the resume. And we get a bit of a analysis of what's going on and how are those matching. We get good matches, we have missing, we have partials, and we do know what some of those workday default settings within the ATSs are. It can't perfectly simulate what an employer specific ATS, what they might have their situations and their weights set at, but we can baseline on a few things and we can get an idea of how that score might look. And then once again, we can take a look at some suggestions of what we could maybe include in that resume to get a better resume at the end of the day. So, we can use AI to take a deeper look at how, what we're teaching, what we're writing, how we helping our customer be more effective overall. So there are some net positives to using some of these technologies. becoming familiar with them, becoming fluent in them, um, and then passing along some of that knowledge and skill to our clients. So I have a ton of these tools that I've kind of made. They're kind of fun to make. If you go to that prompt library, I'm gonna bring it back up here. Whoop, wrong one. Sorry, guys. You'll find a tab called Custom GPTs. Um, I've included a list of everything that I've created with a brief little description and a link to each one. All you need is a ChatGPT account to use them. They're free. Play around with them, have some fun, get used to using AI. Um, and that ends my demonstration. So the message I want to end and send you guys with is one of positivity. AI, it's going to be here in the future and it's going to get better. It's going to change. It's not scary. And if we use it, if we learn it, we can use it to work smarter and not harder. And with that, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out, for listening to my conversation. If you want a copy of this presentation, if you want a copy of the links to the prompt library as well as everything else, scan that QR code, give it your name, your email, provide me some feedback, and it'll automatically email it to you guys. And I saw that there were some questions. What is the impact these jobs, the use of AI will have in our environment? Oh, AI is pretty devastating to the power grid that takes a lot of power, a lot of water to cool the GPUs that power the data centers. It is a pretty significant concern. But unfortunately, kind of the fact of the matter is that concern isn't shared by the current administration or those pushing these initiatives. So while it does take a lot of power, a lot of impact on the environment, uh, those conversations aren't playing into the overall narrative right now. And it's full speed ahead with uh, improving these technologies. So that being said, you know, that is a long-term issue that we are going to eventually have to answer for. But I do expect there to be innovations within those industries that make the power generation, that overall industry to improve with time in progress. I hope that answers your question. But AI does have a significant negative impact on the environment. All right. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to let me know. And if not, thank you guys so much. You want to know something else, feel free to shoot me an email or we can continue a conversation uh, outside of the presentation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Cody. As usual, you knocked it out of the park. So kudos. We certainly appreciate you giving us an hour and a half today, and I'm sure people would have sat and listened much longer. Uh, to everyone else, thank you for joining us today. On behalf of Maud, we're happy that we were able to offer this topic today with Cody's skills and presentation. So thanks.